Directors of Democracy for New Mexico. And we'll start this round with Mr. Colon. What is your opinion on the legislative session this past week as far as developing the appropriations budget for the state? In your answer, please include your opinions on the food and other new taxes, the budget cuts, and whether you agree with the governor's decision not to raise taxes on capital gains and the income tax rate on high-income earners. You'll have a minute and a half.
Thank you very much. Now, when I look around the room, I see a lot of similar faces that were here about a month ago. And a month ago, I think all of us, except maybe Mr. Rael, came out and said, look, it is time. We have got to make sure that the tax rollbacks of 2003 are reevaluated. And we have got to put the burden on the highest earners in the state of New Mexico. I stood before you and said it's time for the rich to pay their share in this crisis. If this is not a rainy day in a crisis, I'm not sure what is. Now, some of us had the opportunity to go vote and tell you and show you whether we really meant it. I did not. Rest assured that if given the opportunity, we will put that 2003 40% tax rollback back on the table to help close this gaping hole in our budget. No question. I have been against the food tax. Many of you saw the editorial that ran on many blogs saying that I didn't want them taxing my tortillas. Frankly, I want them taxing my income. I'm one of those earners in New Mexico that's making a living in New Mexico and not hurting right now. We cannot balance this budget on the backs of New Mexicans that are hurting the worst right now. And that's what we tried to do in this last session. Absolutely unacceptable. Meanwhile, we didn't take care of combined reporting, we didn't take care of high-income earners, and we didn't make sure that we balanced the back, that we didn't balance the budget on the backs of those who can afford to take the hit in these very difficult times. Instead, we continued with the incredibly regressive tax structure of the year 2003. That's not acceptable for New Mexicans. It's not acceptable for me.
I don't think anybody that was in the special session was happy with the outcome. It was a compromise. It was something that could achieve enough support to get through the process. We don't decide which taxes we're going to pass by multiple choice options. Here are 16 possible taxes. Please vote for the ones you want the most, and then we'll just tally up the results, and that's the one that goes. The process, unfortunately, isn't that simple. It's one of trying to get enough votes to get something through the Senate, or enough votes to get something through the House. No single tax that was proposed had enough support to get through both houses, not one. But when we put together a package, we started getting a little bit of compromise. I'll give in on that if you give in on this. The governor never let us, he didn't put in his proclamation the rollback of the income tax. That's why a significant number of Democratic senators would not vote for it, because they said, what's the use? He's just going to veto it. We finally found with the add-back provision, the elimination of the deduction for high income, for anybody who itemizes, I shouldn't say high income, but most of the people that itemize are high income earners. Eliminating that deduction leveled out the regressivity of the other taxes that were part of the package. Am I happy with what we did? Not really. Did I think we could get anything better out of there this year with the makeup of the body and with the governor's attitude? No. It's a compromise that probably means nobody's perfectly happy, but at least we didn't have to make major cuts beyond those we did, which are going to hurt enough.
Well, let me ask you all this question. How many of you were happy with the legislative session? Raise your hands if you thought it was a great session. Well, I feel a lot like you do. You know, the interesting thing about budgets and what I've learned in my career and my experience in managing billion-dollar budgets is that you don't start trying to balance a budget the first day of the legislative session. You start working on budgets the year after you pass this, right after the session, you start working on the next year's budget, and you start getting the leadership of the legislature and the executive together to work on the budget. Because by the time you get to the session, if you're trying to make billion-dollar decisions, it's too late. Everyone's fixed themselves into their political positions, and it's hard to get compromise. So my point is that, no, I'm not happy with the session. I think we've got great people serving in the legislature, but it's a really difficult time to do something if you don't have enough time to understand the complexity of the issues. And that's why it's important to have experience there, people who know how to balance budgets. And yes, I've said that New Mexicans don't need to be taxed. I believe that we need to live within our means first, show the citizens of New Mexico that we're able to live within our means, and then come back and prioritize where we want to raise revenues and what particular areas do we want to focus our dollars so that we're consistent with our policy and our money. That's what this is about. This is about experience. Again, you can't balance a budget unless you have the ability to get people together and work together to make that happen. That's what I've done throughout my career.
Good morning again. Excuse me, I have allergies today, so I'm kind of coughing and hacking here. When you talk about the issue, what we do in the legislature, no, as the good senator has said, most of us were not happy with it. I was not happy. In fact, I voted against the tortilla tax. It's documented. And why? Because I think we really need to start looking as to what we do in our tax system that we have in the state. In my 14 years, I really haven't seen any real movement to see what we need to do to change the system. And I really do believe that's what we need to do under the guidance of our new governor, and if I'm there with her, we can do that. When you talk about the tobacco tax, the sin taxes, I support those issues, always have, always will. But on the other hand, when you look at my record, I stood against the governor early on. In fact, he took me to what they call the woodshed many a time over because I stood against taking off the grocery receipts, even off food, because we knew, serving on the finance committee, that that particular tax is the one that was the most consistent. And he already had told us we would be in where we are at this point, even without the national economy as to where we are. I stood against the tax income breaks for the rich. In fact, the year after that bill got passed and signed, if you look at my record, for the last 4 years, I've introduced a bill to get rid of it. Finally got some attention, but we need to work on it. And that's kind of the work that I will continue to do and continue to work and listen to our communities, because Albuquerque is not the only community that is suffering. Everybody across their state, and we have to change it. Thank you.
Well, we were here over a month ago, and we talked about this exact issue. And we talked about what was going to be coming up that session, and even after this special session, we're talking about the same issue. And I said, after even the special session last fall, I said, here in Albuquerque, to a Democratic pancake breakfast, that the way we're going to be able to balance this budget is a tax on the wealthy, income earners over 200. Also, that we are going to take a portion of our capital outlay and be able to return that back to the general fund. And we're going to be looking at a grocery tax. We voted for that in the House of Representatives. We did vote for a surtax on the wealthy. We did take away $150 to $200 million on capital outlay. And we did vote for a grocery tax, spreading the burden to everyone. The House of Representatives did that, and I voted for everyone. I told you I would, and I did. It's not a promise. It was a promise kept. Not only a promise, but a promise kept. I did it. And that's exactly what we're going to be needing to do as the next lieutenant governor. We need to bring back and get rid of the food tax, because if you want to harm the most needy, you're going right after them. The ones that need to eat, the ones that are barely paying the bills. These are the people that need the help right now, and we went after them. That was uncalled for. I'm a mayor. This food tax was not to save the municipalities. It was to save the state, because they never gave up their food tax. Ladies and gentlemen, I voted the way you said. I promised I would. I did. It wasn't just a promise. It was a promise kept.
Thank you all.